been sold the idea that financial independence is all about some number on your account statement, or even worse, that you don't qualify because of where you started out. That's just not true. It's not about some well-kept secret of the wealthy. It's about finding the right information and knowing how to apply it. On the Get Ready for the Future show, we're answering your questions so you can start making real financial change today. The journey to true financial independence begins right here, and it starts with you.
The show here to help you discover, protect, and share true financial independence. Welcome aboard for the next half hour. It is the Get Ready for the Future show. My name is Scott Inman, along with GenWealth co-founder John Shrewsbury, to answer your questions today. We've got 4 of them teed up, and we're going to get to it in just a minute. As our show gets into April, and John and I were just talking before we went on the air, and I know people say this all the time, but it is so amazing how fast time goes. It is hard to believe that the second quarter of 2025 is already here. I'm sad to see March Madness basketball go, but I'm not sad to see March Madness in the markets go. We're about ready to get that done with.
I would love to get that done with, and you're right. And dare I say that most of our audience is going to agree with this statement. It is, as you get older, time moves faster.
Yeah.
And I was just saying, it's just like the first of the year was just yesterday. And so here we are at the end of March and 1st of April, moving into the second quarter. And we hope that the second quarter is way less volatile than the first quarter.
Yeah, and an application point to those comments, John, is I was sitting with some clients just before we came in today. We were talking about estate planning, and they're in their 40s and still pretty good ways out from retirement, but we talk about it every year. The annual review comes around, and we're still talking about that estate plan. You've been working on that? No, we need to get that done, and I think that's pretty common for many of our clients. It takes a lot of effort to get your financial documents together to build your retirement plan, and you want to take a break a lot of times, right? I got that part done, and the estate plan is a piece of it that still needs some attention. And so when you talk about time going by so fast, there is no time like the present to make the right actions, the right decisions for your financial future. We want to give you a great opportunity to do that. We have a GenWealth Academy workshop coming up in a week. It is on April 8th. It's called What You Need to Know Before You Retire. We invite you to join us at 6:30 on Tuesday, April 8th at the Chenal event venue in West Little Rock. We need you to sign up. It's free to attend, but space is limited. You can visit getreadyforthefuture.com/academy to sign up and check out other events in your area as well. But we'll be talking about what you need to know before you retire. We're going to talk about Social Security, investments, income planning, all of those things very prevalent to you. And so if you need a help getting jump started, make some decisions and actions about your financial future, this would be a great opportunity to get some good information and get educated about the steps you need to take to become financially independent. And listening to this show, we hope you also get some great advice as well, or some information, I should say, some education, because our viewers are always asking great questions. And here's our first one for today. Claire from Rogers asks, can you tell me more about indexed universal life investments? I've heard some about them lately, but I don't really know what they are or how to know if I need that in my portfolio. Claire, thanks very much. You're definitely going to hear a lot about them because they are advertised quite a bit. And John, I think there's been a real proliferation of this online and social media.
Yeah, there are apparently, from what I understand, some multi-level marketing organizations or strategies like that to market and push these things. And you always have to wonder, okay, so is this good for me or is it good for them?
Right.
And so, Index Universal Life has some positive characteristics to it. It also has some negative characteristics to it. It is just like any other financial product. It doesn't have a personality. It's not good or bad. It is a tool, and if the tool is used properly, it can be of value. And if the tool is used improperly, it can wreck your financial future if you depend on it. So I think it is with that context, Scott, that we jump into talk about indexed universal life. And let's kind of play off of the traditional whole life insurance policy. The traditional whole life insurance policy has lots of fixed attributes to it. The cash value is guaranteed. The death benefit is guaranteed. The interest rate is likely guaranteed, although they don't disclose what the interest rate is in a whole life policy. But an index universal life policy is basically exactly what it says. It is tied to an index or the return of an index in some way, shape, form, or fashion. The details of that can become convoluted as to how much of that index you actually get in terms of appreciation of the cash value. But it is at its heart a life insurance policy. It is a combination of decreasing term insurance and increasing cash value life insurance. And so when you think about this, you have to ask yourself, okay, what is it that I really am trying to achieve with this? And life insurance is for protecting your income. It is not for necessarily the accumulation of money, although it can serve that purpose if you run out of all of the other options to save money. But I've not ever really run into anybody that's run out of all the other options to save money, Scott. But there is a significant difference in an investment and an insurance policy.
Yeah, so I think you need to separate the two when you talk about insurance and investment. So let's take on a look at what an index universal life policy has from an investment perspective. And John talked about it. You're really talking about being tied to an index. So when we say an equity index, we're talking about something like the S&P 500. That's the one that most people are familiar with. It's also the one that's probably going to be the most common, but it's typically going to have a cap on the upside. So in other words, if any given year the S&P 500 index does 10%, there may be a cap of 6%. And these are just hypothetical, not certainly guaranteed for sure on any given product. But in other words, if the market does 10%, you only get 6% of that. So it's limiting, in that case, the upside of your investment. So from an investment perspective, we don't typically use, wouldn't think of using an index universal life policy for its investment opportunity, because of those gains being capped, John, and they may not give you the growth you need to achieve your financial goals.
And I think that's where the rub comes in as far as we're concerned with Index Universal Life and how it's marketed, because online there are a lot of either unqualified or slightly qualified people giving advice, telling people to take their money out of their 401k plan, pay the taxes on it, put it in the Index Universal Life, because Index Universal Life never goes down. And there is some validity to that statement that it never goes down, but there's also the dollar cost averaging that you're doing inside your 401k plan that ultimately works to your advantage if everything, continues to go up as the market has historically done. I think that there is a lot of fear-based marketing that is done on Index Universal Life, trying to pull money away from 401k plans, and not to mention the fact that if you stop putting money in your 401k plan, guess what you also don't get? The company match,
right? Which
is lost money. So there is a lot there that to a person who is going to react knee-jerk style or emotionally about the market volatility that's going on right now, you can make Index Universal Life sound really good. You can also make a Salsier sound pretty good too,
Right.
But it's just not necessarily the thing for you to do to replace any other type of investment that you might have, because, there's going to be taxes due on that money, or, that never goes down, or whatever their excuse is for trying to market that product.
Yeah, and I think the answer lies in her question, because she says, how do I know if I need it in my portfolio? Well, the guy trying to sell it to you without knowing a thing about you is certainly not acting in your best interest, of whether knowing if you need it in your portfolio is really a foregone conclusion. So said another way, if you're seeing a commercial or a sales pitch for a specific investment product, no matter what that product is, that is a red flag, because we don't believe there's a magic investment. There's not a one-size-fits-all approach. As John mentioned, I really like the way you said that. It doesn't have personality. It's not a person. It's not good or bad.
That's right.
It depends on how it is used and who needs it to be used. Pitching a product over a plan is wrong.
So let's talk about how it could be used. Couple of things that I think about a permanent need for life insurance. An index universal life insurance policy can provide for that definitive need. However, you need to understand also that as you get older, the cost of insurance is going to continue to go up in an index universal life policy. And so what's going to happen is internally that might outstrip the actual premium that you're paying, and so your cash value could go down. If the cash value goes down all the way to zero, then the policy lapses and you don't have any life insurance and you don't have any cash value. So that's the drawback of index universal life. But if it is able to be structured where that permanency is in place, where you're funding it with enough money, then it can be a good value as far as the cash value life insurance category goes. So where can you use cash value life insurance? So if you have someone who has special needs and you don't have the means to fund those special needs after you're gone, that would be, a necessity for you to fund into your later years, 60s, 70s, 80s, something like that. Cash value life insurance might be a solution there. Another area could be if you have an illiquid business and you're going to pass that business on to your family, and there would be estate taxes involved in that business. Then to provide the liquidity for those estate taxes, index of universal life might be a solution there. But Scott, I think we're nibbling at the edges of a traditional financial plan when we talk about this product. It is certainly not a mainstream product.
Right, definitely. So I think, Claire, ultimately I would get with a financial advisor that is a fiduciary, that is fully licensed, has access to the investment universe, and that plans for your financial future first, and then has the investment products available to be the tools to get you to financial independence. Our next question is from Greg via text message, and he asks us, can I set up a trust that incentivizes my heirs to make responsible financial decisions? Greg, the quick answer to that is absolutely. That's one of the main reasons people choose to create a trust. The other is to bypass probate and not have the cost and the public nature of your estate being out there and having to pay the government to go through the probate process. But let's talk about the reasons you would how a trust works, John, so that you can incentivize your heirs to make responsible financial decisions.
So, Scott, a trust is essentially a legal entity. It is almost like a company. It is your own personal legal entity that you put your assets into in the name of the trust, so that when you pass away, certain things can be done according to the trust language. And who controls the trust language? Well, you do, through your attorney that structures that trust to be basically distributed out to your heirs, whoever it is that you want to receive those funds. So your question really turned on, what about making sound financial decisions or quality financial decisions with that money? Oftentimes we see when a beneficiary receives an IRA or a 401k or a life insurance policy, it is happy days are here again. It is like the piggy bank has been broken out, and we go get new cars, we go get new houses, we go get all this stuff, and mom and dad would have sure wanted us to do that. Well, what mom and dad probably want you to do is to make smart financial decisions with this money and use it to your long-term benefit, not short-term gratification. So when you set up a trust, that trust actually acts as a tool that distributes money to your heirs according to the language that is in the trust. Now, who does that? A trustee is the person that actually does that. So if you feel like you have financially responsible children, then you can name one of the children as the trustee of that trust, and they can administer that trust according to the terms of the trust. Now, if they don't do that for whatever reason, then the other children can take them to task, maybe even bring a lawsuit if they are not fulfilling their fiduciary responsibility in the trust. You have to be able to look at that trust and say, okay, am I going by in accordance to what this trust says? And you have a legal responsibility ability to do that if you're a trustee. Now, there are corporate trustees. If you say, my kids are going to fight, I don't want that, or nobody's responsible to really administer this, then there's a corporate trustee. Banks do this in their trust department all the time. They become the corporate trustee of your trust, and then they administer that as a third party according to the terms of the trust. And so that's how a trust generally works. And there's a lot of ifs, ands, and buts that you can throw into a trust to say, I want this money distributed in this particular way, in this particular fashion, over this particular amount of time. Where you run into a little bit of a challenge, Scott, is in the conflict with the IRA regulations, the Secure Act, as it's called, that actually forces the distribution of IRA assets and any other type of qualified asset out of that trust within a 10-year period of time.
Yeah, so just to kind of reiterate what you're saying, for Greg and anybody else interested in this, if you have beneficiaries of any retirement account, and it is the next generation, 10 years or more younger than you upon your passing, and typically upon your passing, if you're married, it's going to go to your spouse, so it doesn't apply to the spouse, but once the second spouse has passed away and it goes to the next generation, the rule now states that the inherited IRA dollars must be completely withdrawn over a 10-year period, and that does supersede any language written into the trust. So just know that you still could put some regulators on that, right? Because the happy days are here again would be prolonged at least over 10 years instead of 10 days, but it does have to come out over the 10 years. And another thing to keep in mind here too is you have to fully fund the trust. A lot of people are good at creating trust, but they don't put the things in place to fully fund the trust. Some of your assets you may want the trust to own while you're alive, like your home, other real estate, maybe even bank accounts. But some assets you may want to only fund the trust with the assets after your death. And I think about, too, you talk about incentivizing your kids. Another piece to this, too, is a lot of times the IRAs and the other investment accounts are pretty simple. You're just going to divide those up pro rata and the kids get them. But there are some special items, some things that you may want your son to have the guns, or maybe it's your daughter to have the guns. I don't know. But if you have special items like that, guns, jewelry, special things like that, you can identify which of your children gets those, and that can be talked about while you're still living.
Yeah, and there's all kinds of caveats in trust that can be created where if you say, okay, well, I want to be sure that if I leave this particular asset to my spouse in a blended family type situation, that the money passes on down to the decedent's children from the spouse in that particular account or whatever the case may be. There's a lot of caveats that you can put into a trust, and that's why you would sit down with an attorney to walk through that and deal with the complexities of a particular trust. Most of the time, though, you can do a trust, and it's fairly simple. It's fairly straightforward, and there are ways that you can do that at less cost than actually sitting down with an attorney. So there's a lot of difference there that you can take a look at and try to create something that gives you the opportunity to control that money and incent your children to be financially responsible with whatever it is that you have left them in the bequest.
We say it all the time, John, retirement is more than just investments. That highlights one of the things that should be a part of your overall retirement plan. If you're not getting that, or if you don't have a financial advisor at all, we'd invite you to walk through the GenWealth Ready to Retire process, and that can start with a simple phone call or email. You can call us toll-free at 866-653-PLAN. That's 866-653-7526. Or send us an email. Just send it to show@getreadyforthefuture.com and say you want to meet with a GenWealth financial advisor. That first meeting is complimentary, and we'll talk to you about estate planning. We'll talk to you about the role of insurance, like we talked about in the previous question, and your retirement income needs and desires as well. This is the question of the week from Greg. We're going to give him a Get Ready for the Future Show tumbler for being the question of the week. Just send us an email at show@getreadyforthefuture.com to claim it, Greg. And if you'd like to win one of our tumblers, or if you just want to hear your question on the air, send us a question, and we might use it on the air. You can text it to 501-381-5228, or if you'd like your voice to be on the Get Ready for the Future show, you can leave a voicemail to that number too. Just call 501-381-5228 right now and leave us your question. You might hear it on the air next week. Next up, it's Tiffany via email. My husband is looking to become a stay-at-home dad. I've heard about something called a spousal IRA. Do we need one of those or for him to keep our retirement savings on track? Well, maybe, Tiffany, and it's certainly simply an IRA opportunity for your husband to own an IRA. So when we say spousal, and it gets called a spousal IRA, but really it is it would be his IRA. He would be funding his IRA, but a lot of people don't realize, John, because the rule states you have to have earned income to be eligible to contribute to an IRA. But if you are filing a joint tax return with your spouse, even if you individually didn't earn any money during that year, you are still eligible to contribute to an IRA.
Well, and she talked about in this question to keep our retirement savings on track. I think that there's a lot of validity to thinking about if your husband is working and he has a 401k plan, you may want to consider rolling that over to an IRA. There's pros and cons to that, and we can send you out a little flyer that has all that information on it, a brochure that has all of that information on it about the pros and cons of rolling to an IRA. And what I think that it really does, in addition to all the other things, is it kind of keeps track of where that money is. 401k plans, once you leave an organization, you can almost forget about them, or they can forget about you. And by rolling that over to an IRA, you own that asset. You get that asset, statements mailed to your home. You are in control of the investments. You can put a different investment in if you don't particularly like the ones that you've got, or whatever the case may be. There's a lot of functionality there, but I would consider that to be the first thing that I would do. Now, going forward, your spouse can contribute up to the IRA limits into their IRA if they are not employed, as Scott said, as long as you are filing a married and filing jointly tax return.
Yeah.
And so, Scott, I think that's $7,000 a year that he can contribute to that IRA, even though he's not working. Obviously, that's going to come from the wife's money that is being generated from her job, but it's imputed over into his IRA. And if you're 50 or over, I think that figure goes up to $8,000.
Yeah, and if you're 50 and over and you're becoming a stay-at-home dad, God bless you. But if you are, yes, you have a $1,000 catch-up contribution. You can get even more into a retirement plan.
You hadn't figured that plan out yet, huh?
No, I haven't, for sure. But I would say a couple of things to look out for. First of all, if you are younger, if you're not 50, if you're significantly younger, I think thinking about a Roth IRA would be a great option here too. Assuming you're going down to one income, you're probably not going to hit the income limits that would make you ineligible for a Roth IRA, but you need to know about that too, so check that out. But it's over $200,000 a year, so well over. I think it's up to $240 now. So for married people, if you're making over $200,000 a year jointly, you may not be eligible for a Roth IRA. But if you are, I think that would be a great option here too, to begin one there for the stay-at-home dad, because he can get the same amount, $7,000 or $8,000 if 50 or over, into a Roth IRA. And as you may know, that grows tax deferred and can be withdrawn tax free. So there's no taxation on the Roth growth. Great option for you to have tax-free income in retirement. And then another thing I would say is don't opt for going all in on the spousal retirement plan without making sure you're getting the full employer match if you have a 401k available at your job, Tiffany, because that can be real easy, because people sometimes still think about, well, I've got a retirement money, but he doesn't have retirement money.
Right.
He needs some retirement money, but don't walk away from getting that full match first.
Well, and I think also this has to be in context with your plan. You've got to ask yourself, okay, this is my destination out here. This is where I want to get to. Here's where I'm at now. Can I still get there and do the stay-at-home dad thing? If that's the case, then great. And if you can't, then you may want to refigure that whole calculation, because financial independence is what you're working for. Financial independence is your ultimate goal. If you can't get to financial independence, then being a stay-at-home dad might not be the way that you need to necessarily go, because there is no do-over for retirement. There's a lot of do-overs on other expenses, but no do-over on retirement. You've got to fund your retirement yourself. Unless you have a pension, there's just not anybody sitting out there saying, hey, you know what? We're going to be sure that you're taken care of as far as retirement is concerned. You've got to do it yourself. And so I think context is a big, big deal here.
Before we get to our final question, I want to remind you again about our GenWealth Academy workshop coming up next week. It's on Tuesday, April 8th at 6:30 at the Chenal Event Venue in West Little Rock. It is entitled What You Need to Know Before You Retire. So if you're about to step off into your days of financial independence and you're unsure about what all of the money you've saved means to you in income or when to claim Social Security, what about health care costs, long-term care? We're going to cover all the bases. What do you need to know before you retire? Won't you join us? It is absolutely free to attend. We just need you to register because space is limited and we don't want to pack too many people in there. Visit getreadyforthefuture.com/academy to sign up. And you can also find other events. If you can't make that one, all of our events are listed there on that website.
Scott, the events that we do at GenWealth are really the hallmark of our education process. We are education-driven, strategy-based, and team-delivered. So we start with this education thing. And let me just give a quick little snippet preview of this workshop. There are risks as you head into retirement that you have never faced before. Throughout all of your years of investing that you've been putting money away in a 401k or IRA or whatever the case may be, you've had one set of risk. As you go into retirement, there is a completely different set of risk, and almost no one talks about those risks. And so when you're planning for this, it is best to know about the risk and plan around those risks and protect yourself from some of those risks and use them to your advantage before you get into retirement. So that is enough. Just that one aspect is enough for the cost of attendance, which is absolutely free at the Chenal Events Center next week. I would encourage anyone, if you are out there and getting anywhere close to retirement, this is the event you want to be at.
And we're going to give you a little preview here with our next question about one of those risks. Mike from Conway writes, I'm 63 and am considering retirement soon. I have a large amount of money in my 401k, which I have built up over the years. I may be oversimplifying the situation, but why shouldn't I just simply pull from my 401k what I need to live on above my Social Security? I'm sure I'm missing something, so help me out. Well, Mike, we are going to help you out, and here's where we would begin with that big risk. 401k plans, if you're planning to leave that in the 401k, there is an inherent risk to what we call sequence of return risk. So if you're going to randomly or even systematically pull money out of that 401k, it may be in a growth investment or multiple growth investments. Likely is because 401k plans are great accumulation vehicles. They have a lot of growth funds available in there. But as we've seen, as you've probably seen with your 401k in the last few months, that can take a hit at any given time. Short-term volatility is the price we pay for long-term growth. And if you lose 2 or 3 or 4% in value in that 401k, and you're making withdrawals, that can deplete the value of your 401k in a much quicker fashion. John, we've seen study after study on this that can compare year to a different year, even month to a different month on when withdrawals began. And they may, in that comparison, those withdrawals may be the exact same amount, but because no one, including financial advisors, can control the order in which you get the returns in the market, that puts you at serious risk.
What you got to have is you got to have the right strategy. And hear me when I say this, that an investment is not necessarily a strategy. A strategy is how you actually execute the plan that you've put together. And that is why you don't necessarily want to leave it in the 401k. The 401k is an investment vehicle. It is not a financial plan. It is not a strategy by which you're going to execute income coming to you from that set of investments. And so sequence risk is one of the risks that is sitting out there in the midst of that 401k with no financial advisor attached to it, no one coaching you along the way, helping you to be sure that your strategy keeps you from executing on sequence of return risk and runs you out of money before you run out of time. That's one of the things that a plan does for you. Also, there is longevity risk. The fact that we are living longer, the fact that medical advances are causing us to live longer and longer. And by the way, we're trying to retire earlier and earlier. And what that does is it really just puts this rubber band tension on your assets. And when you think about running out of money, you don't want to be in a situation where you can't pay your basic living expenses because there's no money there left to pay with. What you want is regular, predictable income that is able to be continued throughout the rest of your life, regardless of how long your retirement is or how long you might live. And so that's what we call longevity risk. Yeah. I think one other thing, Scott, that we want to talk about, actually two other things. One is inflation risk. And we've seen that. Everybody ought to know that you've got to have some way of increasing your income over time.
Yeah, that's what I was going to talk about next, and it was really drawing the two together, longevity risk and inflation risk. Because Mike says, why can I not just live on Social Security to pay my expenses and then use my 401k for what I need above and beyond my living expenses? And a key problem with that is Social Security is probably not going to keep up through the rest of your life with your living expenses. The cost of living adjustments on Social Security are usually tracking well below the overall senior inflation rate. Now, when I say senior inflation rate, is we've seen the cost of living adjustment on Social Security is set based on a 3-month time period late in the year, the average inflation rate in any given year. So if you go back to 2024, I think it's August, September, and October, if I recall, they averaged those months of the core inflation rate across the board in this country, and that is how they give the Social Security inflation-adjusted cost of living raise. However, that doesn't include things that seniors, some things that the seniors will be spending money on, like drugs, healthcare costs, those type of things. So, well,
and also you can see increases in Medicare costs almost vanquish any increase that you get in Social Security.
Yeah. So a key takeaway there is your Social Security is not likely to cover your living expenses for the duration of your retirement. So you still need to build in inflation-adjusted raises from your investments. So that goes back to needing some growth, John, which the 401k might be good at. But again, you need a strategy that encompasses both conservative investments for the money that you're taking now in retirement and growth investments for the money you need to take later because you're going to need to take larger withdrawals.
The last one, Scott, is unexpected expense risk. And this is when you just come up and say, you know what, I've got $50,000 I want to go spend on a car. Well, the question becomes, okay, how does that affect your overall plan and your ability to keep income flowing to you? It's kind of like the difference between milking a cow and eating steak. You know, if you go and kill the cow and get steak, then you're probably going to not have very much milk the next day. Yeah. So that's the whole issue with that unexpected expense risk. You've got to be able to plan for those and understand how they affect your overall long-term ability to produce income to you.
So to wrap up there, if you leave your money in your 401k, it might be difficult to avoid the risk you're going to face in retirement. And even if you decide to roll that money out of your 401k and get it into an IRA where you may have access to different types of investments, do you really want to go it alone and create your own investment strategy and kind of just willy-nilly decide I'm going to take this much out in March and this much out in October, next year it might be different? Using a financial advisor who builds a retirement income plan can alleviate a lot of those problems, and I would encourage you to do that. And I'll go ahead and I'll start with my final thought, pitch to you, and then maybe wrap it all up. How about that? Let's just do it different today.
That works.
So my final thought is we've talked about this with several of our questions, but I would encourage anybody who has a similar question on their mind as the ones we have heard today to reach out to us and walk through the GenWealth Ready to Retire process. You can do that with a simple phone call. You can call us at 866-653-PLAN. That's 866-653-7526 and set up your first complimentary appointment with a GenWealth financial advisor. You can also reach out via email. Just send us an email at show@getreadyforthefuture.com. Begin walking through that process. The first appointment costs you nothing to sit down and have a conversation, and you can determine at the end of that appointment if we're a right fit for you. But determining whether you're on track for financial independence, determining if a certain investment product is right for your portfolio should never be done alone.
And it should never be done in a vacuum. And certainly, as I think about the questions that we've gotten today, the number one thing that keeps people from being financially independent is they just don't do it. They just don't save enough money to actually get there. But the second thing I think, and this is probably the most important thing that you'll hear from this broadcast, financial independence isn't driven by an investment product. It is driven by a plan and a strategy. And no investment product out there, I don't care who's pitching it, is the holy grail. You've got to have a plan. You've got to have a strategy. That's why we do the things that we do at GenWealth to help you to discover, protect, and share true financial independence. It is done through a plan, not a product.
And that's all the time we have for this week's Get Ready for the Future show. Again, if you've got a question for next week's show, get them in to us via text or voicemail. Just call 501-381-5228. It's 501-381-5228, answering your questions again next week. See you then.
The GenWealth financial team is available to you 24/7 at info@getreadyforthefuture.com or call our offices at 866-653-PLAN. That's 866-653-7526. You should personally consult a financial advisor before making any investment, and no strategy can assure success. Securities offered through LPL Financial. Member FINRA SIPC. Investment advice offered through Independent Advisor Alliance. Independent Advisor Alliance and GenWealth Financial Advisors are separate entities from LPL Financial.